There isn't going to be a sequel to The Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown.
And that really sucks.
Let's talk about it. Nope.
That's going in. That's going in for sure.
Hello everyone and welcome to Spot On Home Edition, where we have pets running around and we're not obviously in our lovely studio because we're getting a new one, which is very exciting, but that stuff takes time. So please enjoy curated backgrounds. Tam's is much nicer than mine. Mine is a mess and there's a litter tray. And also tiny Greg Kasavin.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like seeing Greg blurred in the background.
Anyway, some crappy news this week coming out of Ubisoft in that they are not moving ahead with a sequel for Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which was, frankly, an awesome Metroidvania that came out at the very beginning of 2024. Everyone loved it, reviewed incredibly highly, although it appears that not many people played it, and Ubisoft has decided to disband that team. Instead, a bunch of them are now moving onward to, what was the phrasing, like,
other projects that will benefit from their expertise.
they're basically, taking that team and putting them back on Rayman, because Montpellier was the studio that worked on Rayman Legends and Origins.
I feel like it's very indicative of Ubisoft's current position, where they don't really know what they're doing with their IPs. They're just kind of throwing darts at the board and hoping that it sticks. In this case, the dart is that team. And the issue that I think they have, or from the outsider looking in, is they're making games that could potentially be successful, but then giving them the worst chance to succeed. And I think The Lost Crown is one of the biggest examples of how they shoot themselves in the foot constantly. Putting things on Uplay is fine, but putting things exclusively on Uplay seems like a very, very stupid move. It feels at this point quite arrogant and egotistical to think that your relatively new digital platform has what it takes to dethrone Steam, which is effectively now in the DNA of PC gaming. Like right now, Microsoft has kind of given some weight to that, and Call of Duty is available on Steam and the Battle.net store. They understand that exclusivity on PC gaming is narrowing the audience to the point where, it could damage the performance of a game. On a game like Call of Duty, I think they could survive, but something like The Lost Crown, Prince of Persia, like that's a death sentence.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate as well, because the trade-off there is obviously Steam will take its cut, and releasing it on your own platform, you don't have to worry about that, but your audience is going to be significantly smaller, especially on PC, where it will find the market. And also just releasing 2 Prince of Persia games in 1 year, obviously Rogue Prince of Persia going into early access, bit of a different game there, but it's very, very strange. And also we're still waiting on the Sands of Time remake. That one got rebooted a couple of years ago, so it's still going to be a little bit, I think 26 they said, for that one.
The Rogue Prince of Persia is also very, very interesting. Like, I played a bunch of it, and it's really cool, but I feel like on the publishing side, the timing and the marketing around both of them cannibalized each other, like the interest around each other. Like, having a second Prince of Persia game knocking around at the same time as your other Prince of Persia game, which you've limited the audience on, seems like a red flag in the marketing department. But it also kind of is indicative of the problem that we keep coming back to with Ubisoft, is it just doesn't have... I don't feel confident that the company understands how to distinguish itself with either its own IPs or its licensed IPs. Like, Assassin's Creed is the big one, and it's probably going to be popular for a really long time, but as a long-time Assassin's Creed fan, I would be lying if I said that it still feels fresh and exciting. It's stagnated maybe 3 entries ago, you know what I mean?
Assassins is a very weird one, because it is a game that I've been playing for, God, is it like 15 years now? I think we're at the anniversary of, even if longer maybe. I do love Assassin's Creed games. There is a familiarity because I've played so many of them. It's like I pick it up and I know exactly what I'm doing. I know immediately how the character is going to control. I know what my objective is. However, to your point, I think something needs to be exciting. It needs to be right. And obviously them delaying it out of 2024 into 2025, now into a kind of weird release window where you're also butting up against things like Monster Hunter Wilds. Like, yeah, they want to get it right, But this was always their window, and it was always a very successful one for them. But after Outlaws didn't perform as well, they needed to be right.
Yeah, and also like whether it's similar timing or not, you're an open world game moving into a spot where GTA could potentially exist. And that is like, people don't have a lot of time or money, and people are very, very, very aware of GTA looming. And so I wouldn't be surprised if people are just like, I'm just going to hold on to my money and play it. And like the other thing is that the familiarity is good, but like the problem I think Ubisoft has is familiarity has broken through the barrier of Assassin's Creed, and it's like crept into every single one of its games. Like all of the games feel pretty much the same. Far Cry feels like Assassin's, Far Cry feels like Avatar feels like Far Cry, The Crew feels like Assassin's Creed or Template, the tower. Nothing really has anything to distinguish itself from the other thing. Yeah. Assassin's Creed needs to have a really good hook to get people back to it. And then like the other properties that are internally, owned, that it just seems to be fumbling around with, like Beyond Good and Evil 2 recently popped up with, Fawzi being put in charge of that. And that thing has been announced. It was announced years ago. Still have no idea what's going on with it.
I miss that era of Ubisoft where they were not as risk averse, where you're looking at the Child of Light years, you're looking at, even when Rayman Origins is coming out, you're looking at Trials even. Those were like really exciting times to be playing Assassin's Creed, to be playing Ubisoft games, because you had the big mainline Assassin's Creed and you had Far Cry, but you also had these cooler experiences that were, I don't know, it was great to see a big publisher do something new and different and incubate these teams within its larger structure. This is what Lost Crown reminded me of that Ubisoft who would take an IP and give it to a smaller team and do something really good with it. Like if that game felt so good to play.
And the trade-off isn't like, they've kicked these smaller games, the strategy around that to the side, and now they're focusing on big games and they're doing great with those big games. They're not really. Like Splinter Cell was one of the two premier stealth franchises, and it remained dormant when its biggest competitor just vanished and went on an extended hiatus. Remake's been announced, don't know anything about it, still have no idea when it's coming out. Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake, that has been restarted. Skull and Bones took years to come out and no one gave a crap. And then that's their own IPs. So they're trying to bolster their business by working with license, and Star Wars Outlaws. It's divisive, some people like it, but it didn't perform like a Star Wars game is expected to perform, that's for sure. And Avatar, again, like one of the biggest multimedia properties in the world. Who's talking about that now? Like, it is no one. And it's because, like you said, they're risk averse. They stick closely to a format that they've used to death now, and now it's become detrimental. And then it's operating on a scale that doesn't really correlate to the kind of returns for it to be successful.
AAA game development, don't need me to tell you, exceedingly expensive. You got to wonder about what those margins are, especially for a game that doesn't hit expectations. What does the future of Ubisoft look like? We have been hearing those rumors of an acquisition. Tencent already have a stake in the company through the Gilmo Bros company. Like, I think they own a chunk of that. So they own
like a small percentage of it, like 10% or something like that. Something very small, but I mean, they are big enough that, I mean, I think they talked about the objective being to stabilize Ubisoft and bolster its value. And Tencent is a company that has shown that it's clearly got more money than sense. And that is a company that probably looks quite appealing if you were trying to get your game company back on track. I know everyone knows for a fact that the Guillemot family would rather keep it all within the family. They tried to do that so many times. People have tried to acquire Ubisoft previously when it was at like the height of its success, and they just did not have any of that. And that was like a hostile takeover attempt as well. Well, not as well, but that was a hostile takeover attempt. This feels like it's more negotiated. And so maybe like the future, it does feel like they're in a transitionary period. And if the future is they privatize, that is one way forward, but they can definitely benefit from, having less public scrutiny, because as a private company, they won't have to tell us anything that they're doing. They can just do it. And they'll probably have, if they negotiate properly, more control over what they're doing because of that. There's smaller number of stock shareholders involved. But like, ultimately it comes down to making creative decisions and bets that are gonna, put yourself out there in an interesting way. And the bigger question for me is they could very easily, the Guillemot family or whoever it may be, find themselves to monetary financial stability. But have they spent the time and effort to invest in minds and creative ideas and cultivate them so that when they get there, they can hit the ground running with cool, interesting things that turn their fortunes around? I'm not confident in it yet.
I don't know. It's a weird one because like Ubisoft for a few years were just hit after hit after hit, like huge numbers. Things like Valhalla sold incredibly well, and also you're going to be benefiting from the pandemic and everyone being inside at that point. But it does feel weird. I think this year in general has felt weird. We've said that before. To see a company like Ubisoft floundering on what should have been and what on paper probably were surefire bets. So yeah, sad for the Lost Crown team. You did a great job, like that game.
Yeah, that game is fantastic. I think it's probably, to my mind, after Sands of Time, the best Prince of Persia game, and they should be proud of it. I know they said something like they folded ideas for a sequel into upcoming DLC or something like that, so there's still a little bit life left in that game. And if you're out there and you've not played it because you just generally stay away from Ubisoft games or saw the Prince of Persia name,
at the time?
Yeah, you don't have Uplay at the time. It's a fantastic game, and you should definitely check it. I think I could not stop playing it. I played it in one sitting.
Oh, great on Steam Deck too. All right, thank you for watching this episode of Spot On Home Edition and also Cat Edition. She has been an absolute nightmare this entire time. That noise was her jumping into a box. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again next week. Bye. She took the fattest shit while we were recording.